underlisting your property in Manitoba is actually illegal. Illegal. What? Illegal. Illegal. My goodness. Good morning, investors. Bradley here from Watson Estates, and you're listening to the largest, fastest growing podcast for Toronto real estate on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. You've probably heard the saying, what goes up must come down. Is that the case as it relates to our local real estate market? We're going to talk about that today as well. Where are rental prices headed in 2021 for you investors out there, and what keeps pushing prices beyond affordability? As a broker and investor myself here in the GTA, I want to know where there are opportunities in our market. What are some of the warning signs, some of the things going on around us that we truly need to be paying attention to if we're going to be invested in this market? And that's really what this whole show comes out of, especially with COVID and all the craziness today. We want to know, what should we be looking for? And what are some of the major headlines today? Well, that's what we're going to cover. But I hope you guys have had a wonderful, beautiful week. Today was a little chilly, but the last few days have been fantastic. I've been honestly working on my farmer's tan, not on purpose, but just kind of has been happening that way. Got to put a little bit of aloe vera every so often, but I hope you guys have also been enjoying the nice weather. And you know what they say about a good farmer? A good farmer is not just good at what he does. He's the best in his field. Like and subscribe. I hope you guys like some of these dad jokes. Maybe that would be a way for you to hit that thumbs up, give you a reason. And if you're following us on iTunes or Spotify, iTunes specifically, you're able to leave a review. A 5-star rating and review wouldn't hurt. So take a minute and do that. Truly appreciate all the love and support you guys show all the time. So we're going to start off with, will what goes up come down? Will it? It's definitely been going up. Boy, is it ever up. We're going to start with a BlogTO article today called Toronto is Now the Fastest Growing Financial Center in North America. Did you know that? In fact, the article starts by saying, money, 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 money. That's like the starting, like money. This is the financial center. Is it? Let's listen to what the article has to say. There's a lot of cash flowing through Toronto right now. So much, in fact, that the city is now attracting finance industry workers at a faster pace than any other city in North America. Even New York. Even New York. Is Toronto the new New York? Is that possible? No. We're not on the global stage, are we? Well, while New York City remains the largest financial center on the continent in terms of employment numbers, Toronto is catching up fast, according to newly released data from the Conference Board of Canada. Toronto now boasts the second largest financial industry in North America, following New York, and ranks 8th on the global scale, right between Paris and Shanghai. So you want to talk about, why are prices so high? Well, maybe it's because we're an international city. Could we one day be huge? No, we already are huge. We're filling in those shoes today as it relates to the real estate prices. We're going to talk, obviously I want to set the stage for where there's some concerns in our market. This isn't just a roses all the time type of show. I like to put both sides into perspective, but there's a very real reason people have opted to invest in the Greater Toronto area. Toronto is an increasingly important player in the world of global finance. Here's another fun nugget. Between the largest 5 banks, RBC, TD, Scotiabank, BMO, and CIBC, together they hold over $2.2 trillion in assets under management right now. It says, good for them. Good for them. They got some of my money too. Who's got your money? Who's got your money? But it's funny because Toronto isn't just a tech hub of North America anymore. We're also a financial hub of North America. Little known fact, but we're there. We're there. In many ways, Toronto and Canada are fantastic. There's a reason people want to be here. There's nothing wrong with being number one at things. There really isn't. On second thought, if a farmer succeeds at growing toilets, that would suck, right? Being number one in the number two business, as they say. And the reason is you could end up with squatters. That was a terrible joke. Really is. It's okay. It's fine. My editor, I actually hired a farmer to edit some of these videos. You'd be surprised. Farmers make very good editors. Lots of practice cropping. Moving on. Ryerson.ca, they published some findings kind of tracking where is Toronto as it relates to immigration. Immigration. We know Canada loves their immigrants. We got big targets, but where do we stand as of 2020? Well, Toronto, the article, the way it's worded is interesting. Their choice of words, but here's what it's called. Toronto, third fastest growing among US and Canadian metropolitan areas in 2020, down from first place in 2019. Oh, shucks. 2019 was so much of a better year. 2020, unfortunately, now we're only in third place. Only in third place. Okay. The Census Bureau in the U.S. released new population estimates earlier this month for U.S. metropolitan areas. The estimates show Toronto's ranking slipped. It slipped, and it put us third place, though we were first last year. Toronto was the only Canadian metropolitan area to make the top 10 list, by the way. So there you go. Woohoo. Woohoo. But Toronto remained, this is important, guys. Toronto remained the top destination for net international immigration. Its growth in net immigrants, listen to this, up 116,000, which is more than double that of the next fastest growing metro area, which was actually Montreal, also a Canadian city. But we also do see that in the metro areas, Toronto made the list of 10 metro areas with a net loss of resident population. So we see massive people immigrating into Toronto, but we also see an exodus, for lack of a better word, outside of the metro Toronto area, which we actually come in at number 4 behind New York City, LA, and Chicago. Interesting to see major cities having this leaving or this disbursement taking place in 2020. Could that be a short-term phenomenon, or is that something that will continue? That decision's up to you. We're actually going to discuss that later in the show as well, but let's not put the cart before the horse. We need to look at the risks before us, right? So make like a corn and listen up. Get it? Because they're all ears. But we are headed the other way, folks. We are headed the other way. Yes, Toronto is fantastic. Great. Tell me something I don't know. Well, we got some concerns as it relates to our market. We're going to start with the Globe and Mail article that makes no short terminology. I don't know what the heck I'm saying here. They cut it right to the chase. They say, you know what? I ain't buying in Toronto. Called Amplify. It's an opinion piece, by the way. The article is called I Want No Part of Canada's Broken Real Estate Market, really pointing to some of the issues in our market. But listen and tell me if this doesn't sound like a familiar tune that we hear from millennials or younger Torontonians today. To buy a house in Toronto today requires detaching one's brain from one's body, a kind of new age ritual that's apparently the price of admission to the elite club of home ownership. I love opinion pieces because they're sometimes written in real, like this is so much better than news. No, so much better. But here it continues. For the luxury of owning a place in Toronto, I'd have to scrimp on all the things that make living in a city post-pandemic worth it. And I'd be betting nearly my entire financial future on the hopes that real estate prices continue on their fast track to the moon. So I'm opting out. There you go. Well, with all due respect, I don't think this person is opting out. I think they've been squeezed out and now they're writing an opinion piece. They're telling their story in a way that makes them look great. But that's okay. I get it. But who is it specifically that's getting worried about our market? Because it's not just millennials in their early 30s that can't afford homes like this opinion piece had. It's also financial institutions. Financial Post also mentions the Bank of Canada governor himself is warning about rapid rises in home prices as quote unquote not normal. Here's what they said. Tiff McClellan warned the housing market is not normal as he released new research that suggests real estate prices in some of the country's biggest cities are being driven by a speculative frenzy. Now, come on, man. Dude, the central bank singled out the GTA, Hamilton, and Montreal. There's a lot of red warnings, by the way, on Ottawa. We'll start to see those more in the media. But for right now, we're sticking with those three, GTA, Hamilton, and Montreal, as experiencing worrisome signs of extrapolative behavior. It's extra for short. Which is the way McClem and other policymakers describe market dynamics that they see as out of line with fundamentals of supply and demand. We're out of line. Get back in line. This comes from the Financial Systems Review announced on May 20th, or the FSR for short. McClem told reporters, quote, even without a shock, some of the factors that cause prices to rise fast could reverse later, and that could leave some households with less equity in their homes. A little bit of a warning sign. It could later come down. We're going to see a lot of the Bank of Canada pushing a little bit on these buttons just to say, just be careful, be careful. We'll see that as it relates to interest rates in a minute. But vulnerabilities are different from risks in Bank of Canada's parlance, because officials aren't saying a financial crisis is a possibility. They didn't say it's going to happen. They just said it could happen, rather with the FSR to flag issues that could turn into bigger problems down the road. Here we go. Policymakers listed 6 weak points in total. Here they are. These are the concerns from Tiff McClellan, Governor of the Bank of Canada. Number 1, elevated levels of household debt. Come on, we don't got no debt. What? Bro, chill. A frothy housing market? Nah, come on now. A fragile market for corporate debt. Number 3, a high potential that demand for cash and cash-like assets could outstrip supply in the face of a panic. We're all going to start hoarding toilet paper, yeah? The threat of cyber attacks. Interesting. And number 6, too many assets whose prices fail to reflect their exposure to climate change. Interesting. But these are some of the major concerns they have. Come on. What do we need to worry about, man? Yeah, we get jailed for excessive hay production, but the Bank of Canada will just bail us out. They did it last time, no? But then we also see it from financial institutions, those super successful financial institutions that make us a world leader or a North American leader. Yeah, well, BMO revises their worst case forecast for Canadian real estate to a much larger drop. This is a Better Dwelling article. They revamped their worst case scenario and their best case scenario to really show us, for lack of a better word, we got more uncertainty because they've made our potential upside higher and our potential risk worse or lower. And these are the numbers that they've rejigged as of the end of April. They're seeing in the worst case scenario, a drop of 12% for 2021 and another just under 19% in 2022 in their most predictable or expected, as they call it, base case scenario. They're saying prices would rise 24%, which is the most likely situation, by the way. But also a footnote to this, they're expecting that in 2021, we would see a price increase of 17.8 and in 2022, 5.1. What's interesting to note, though you have a 23% increase in prices over the next 2 years, that at the current rate, their current prediction, don't think, oh yeah, there's huge opportunities ahead of me. Not really, because 1 month of growth, they say, would put prices above their year-end target. So all it's going to take us is another month of some of the price growth we've experienced to really already hit that number, which makes you wonder, well, what happens from here on out? And it tells you BMO's expectation is for a relatively flat rest of 2021. That's what I'm hearing there. But their best case scenario was also rejigged to boost up. They say over the next 2 years, they're expecting a 32.88 at the high end, 32% growth. So are you someone who wants to sit on the sidelines because you're afraid? I'm terrified. I don't want to see house prices drop 18%. And as a potential, I guess your risk is missing out, that FOMO we all have come to know and love, of 32% over the next couple of years, most of which has already kind of happened. But if you consider that few local incomes can already support these prices, they say it would require a huge injection of foreign capital. And I think that that's going to be a big part of this podcast today. Is a big reason why we would see this best case scenario play out is because it's going outside of the incomes of locals. I mean, when you got a detached home over 1.7 million bucks, who's going to buy that? How many people are going to be able to afford that? Well, that train continues when you open up the floodgates of foreign investment in dollars into our real estate market, which is going to the moon. Let's face it. But maybe it's the real estate industry to blame. Maybe, just maybe. I'll give you a few scenarios why that could be the case. Toronto, ctvnews.ca had an article that reads, Toronto real estate agents using new tactics to fuel competition and boost housing prices. Those vicious realtors. Terrible. Who licenses these people? Anyways. So this is what the article says. A new trend. You know how many listings it takes to form a trend? 8. Well, there's this new trend in the Toronto real estate market in which realtors are listing residential homes in the GTA for only, get this, $1. $1. What? What a bargain. And it's less some buyers with questions. I mean, do you guys not understand what's going on here? Do you not? Well, they asked the agent, one of the agents that had a listing like this, bro, they probably cut that bro part out, but I'm assuming he said, bro, why are you doing this? His response was, quote, all we're really striving to do is be innovators in the real estate investment space in Toronto and serve our clients as best we can. Dude, you're pricing it $100,000 below asking. You're just old news. We are innovators. We are doing the best for our clients. We are changing the industry. We're putting it for $1. I really miss when advertising like different advertising of things was just so much more simple. Like, how crazy is this? You want to buy some new cows? You know how it was? You just look through the catalog. There's one way realtors are really barking up the wrong tree here. They're screwed. No, that's not at all the analogy. But we're going to move on. We're going to move on because you know how it is. Blind bidding wars. And we've heard from Treb, you know what? We can't mess with that. We're doing the best things we can for our client. If we want to get permission to do that, we got to get everybody on board for that. There's really not a whole lot we can do to protect the consumer from blind bidding wars. Let's just hope that we can come up with a better solution. But we want to protect the consumer, but we just don't want to change things because you can never really pull that off anyways. Well, guess what? Winnipeg is doing it. Winnipeg Sun. Listen to this. Manitoba Securities Commission. Did you know this? Their organization, the Securities Commission, is the one who regulates and monitors the real estate industry. Imagine that. Imagine that. Interesting. And at the point where they are preparing to issue guidance to agents for the first time in more than a decade. The big culprits have been the blind bidding process and underlistings, both practices designed to pressure the buyer and to artificially inflate the market. Treb's perspective is it doesn't do that. There's no proof that that's actually the case. Well, guess what? Underlisting your property in Manitoba is actually illegal. Illegal. What? Illegal. Illegal. My goodness. The province is one of the few in Canada with legislation prohibiting it. So you mean to say it's possible? Well, it's happening right now. I guess the big question is what would be the loophole in that scenario, right? Would you be allowed to list it low, hold offers, and then because I can't sell it below asking, can I just like take the listing down and relist it? And I don't know what the shenanigans would be, but the point here is there's a province that's dealing with similar issues, but it is illegal to hold offers above asking, right? This crazy race upwards that's taking place, and it's being regulated by the Securities Commission, which I think is very fascinating. We sometimes get stuck in our own little bubble here. Sometimes the government forces us to do it, but in some cases we're ignorant. And so I think it's important that we look even just outside the box slightly, and we can see that there is maybe another option that we should be maybe looking into. But then again, there goes the realtors messing everything up. And I got one more for you. One more. So let's say you're doing an open house, right? This comes from a National Post. They're chatting with these agents. In fact, they're talking to Murray Mansour. He's a Toronto real estate agent. We've actually quoted him before on the show. He's a frequent on some of these media outlets as just a source for info. Well, it's his estimate. And actually, as I was thinking about it, this would be kind of in line with the numbers I would say too, that about 30 to 40% of sellers have a surveillance device of sorts, a trend more common with higher priced homes. Maybe you've looked at a property and you've come across one that had a ring, like a ring or a Google Nest at the front door as you're walking in, right? Listen to this. If the seller hears your buyer is super excited about the property and then you're trying to negotiate and play hardball, it's not really going to work. Even if you're the only offer, it's not going to work. The seller's agent is going to call your bluff. Well, 68% of Canadians have a smart home device of sorts in their own property. Listen to this. And I've seen this time and time again. A baby monitor. Think of that. It's so innocent, right? But a baby monitor can act as a hidden camera. You're walking upstairs. Ooh, I love this master bedroom. What's that I hear in the other room? And then he turns around and says he hates the house, right? I hate the house, but I want to submit an offer. But recording audio, by the way, without their consent is technically illegal. But I think we would be ignorant to ignore the fact that I guarantee you it's happening all over the place. You're supposed to disclose if there's cameras on the property. But when we have so many of these cameras just in plain sight, just kind of hanging around, baby monitors, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Realtors, man, once again, doing everything that they can to try and keep sellers getting their top dollar. How dare you? Try to keep, it can give, this is my joke. I'm about to hit a joke here, but they're working so hard to get top dollar that it could give even a wheat farmer a headache. Or should I say migraines? Oh, moving on. But maybe things are changing. You know, maybe ahead of us, we're going to start to see those prices come down. Maybe some of those concerns are being fully realized, according to another Better Dwelling article called Canadian Housing, quote, Mania is reversing its unsustainable spike, according to RBC. Canada's largest bank thinks the real estate mania might be coming to an end as conditions loosen. The same thing we've been tracking over the last several months, kind of recognizing that maybe the exponential growth is behind us. The market is still very tight, according to RBC senior economist Robert Hoagie. However, buyer demand is falling much faster than new inventory. If this continues much longer, it's going to take the steam out of the market very, very quickly. We're actually already seeing that. In fact, the SNLR, sales to new listings ratio, has dropped to 75% in April. It'll be interesting to see what happens in May. I am super pumped to see what that looks like, but that's down from 81% in March. I truly do hope we start to see that sales to new listing ratio continue to come down across the board. That'd be the best case scenario, but when things begin to cool down, the next question is in which parts of Ontario, right? After all, housing is rarely equal in the ghetto and in the boonies, between the two, right? There's a difference between the real estate pimps and the local farmer. The pimps just speculate on price appreciation, after all, while the farmer tries to make an honest living with his hoe, right? That's the major difference. But we're going to get into our next topic here. We're going to talk about rentals. Rental prices. If you're an investor, you got some rental units, you want to know what's going on. There's been a lot of ups and downs, rental eviction bans, and all the fun stuff that's been going on. Well, where are rental prices today, right? Who can afford to buy anymore? Man, I'm getting more and more interested in this transition we've seen. Back since 2017, where people were moving from the low rise into the condo segment, it became just get a condo. Good enough, man. Just get started, get into our market. Well, that has now evolved into, well, just get a rental unit, you know? What comes next? Get an affordable housing. At every level, they're being squeezed. I find it so fascinating to think all of the buyer demand in the condo space will soon be moved over into tenant demand in the rental space. What kind of pressures are we looking forward to ahead of us? Well, let's start with a BlogTO article. More than half of people in Toronto believe they'll never be able to afford a home here, right? This is the movement. Survey commissioned by Right at Home Realty, a Toronto-based real estate brokerage, suggested 51%, more than half of Ontario residents are, quote, feeling left behind in the current housing market. When looking at the GTA as compared to Ontario, the number goes up to 55%. And in 416, the city of Toronto proper, that's 59% of the numbers. And they get even wider when broken down by age group. 74% is the number that think they're being left behind between the ages of 18 and 34, indicating, quote, they believe they may never be able to afford a home where they currently live. So you got to go somewhere else. Roughly 47% of those aged 35 to 54 felt the same way. So we see significant impact on those under the age of 35. And over the age of 55, by the way, is 37%. So we do see 3/4 of those under 35 don't think they'll ever be able to buy a place in the area they live today. And according to the survey, nearly 1 in 4, that's 23% of respondents who currently rent or live with a family, plan to purchase a home in the next 2 to 3 years. So people want home ownership. I don't think that has ever changed. When I hear the dude talking about how, you know what, I'm opting out of this market, I don't buy it. I don't buy it. Maybe I'm wrong. In fact, the mass exodus even may be over. We're going to talk about this more, but just from this article, they say only 18% of homeowners actually expressed a desire to move from a large city to a smaller community as a result of the pandemic. But that doesn't encompass all Ontarians, only those who are already own homes. So people who already have homes, less than 1 in 5 of them want to move into smaller towns. That sounds very different than it was 12 months ago or even 6 months ago. It seems like if people move far away in 2021, it's because they were forced out of the market, which isn't really a nice thought, right? Poor little farmer. Told he couldn't sell apples anymore with the other farmers. Such peer pressure. Oh, why do I do this to myself? Where do rent rates stand today? Where are they? Because we got to get a picture of where we are before we can dictate where we're going to go. Well, BlogTO had another article called "These Toronto Neighborhoods Have Seen Rent Prices Drop by More Than 30% Last Year." How fun it's been to see 15 consecutive months of rent declines in the city of Toronto. Great news. Love it. Well, in terms of the biggest annual declines today, we see the Yonge and St. Clair neighborhood dropped 39%. Bam. And the lowest decline was in High Park North, where rents are down just 3%. So we've got this big range. Obviously, depending on where you're invested, things will look rather different. But overall, we see declines in rent. Well, is that the case moving forward? Not so much. Listen to this. Quote, "Look for continued flatness until the fall in Canada and rents to start rising more rapidly at that time." So what we're experiencing now is flat, But according to Bullpen President Ben Myers, the changes to the mortgage stress test and the sharp rise in house prices will encourage more people to continue renting and accelerate the late year rent increase. See this transition? You wanted to buy a property. You can't afford it. There's nothing wrong with renting. As Trev would say over and over again, there's nothing wrong with renting. Let's reserve home ownership for the rich. Feel free to rent. It's great. We do see this, by the way, in major global cities. But does that make it the best case scenario? I tend to think not. But that's the pitch. So all of a sudden, we got all these buyers moving into the rental market, and Bob's your uncle. Rent goes up through the roof. Here's what we're looking forward to, guys. The Canadian property bubble is pushing rents higher as more apartments sit empty. We see vacancies, by the way, at an 18-year high. Also interesting, this balance, right? We see primary rental vacancies reaching 3.4%, which is very high in Toronto, considering it was under 1% in my memory, just not even that long ago. But I actually got a message from my friends over at Live Rent, and they're just giving us the info, early scoop on May. May is not over, of course, but as we're looking at the data for this month, which they publish it on an ongoing basis, but we got the scoop. We got the inside scoop. We get it first. And here's what they say. Rents for unfurnished one bedroom in downtown Toronto is rising fast. Rising fast. Some insights. Listen to this, guys. Up 5.5% since May. When we look at this is as of last month. So from over the last month, we're experiencing a 5.5% increase. Unfurnished rent in the GTA averaged just under $1,700, which is actually below the one bedroom in Vancouver. And except for Markham and Brampton, all other areas are rising fast in rent. So almost across the board, with a few exceptions, we're seeing rent rates rising over the last month. It'll be interesting to see how, obviously the stats will come out for the public in the next week or so, but it doesn't surprise me. The media has been very reluctant to say we're seeing any trend in an increase in rent, but I'm of the belief that we're there. We are there. I'm seeing the pressures. Writing's on the wall as far as I'm concerned. But as mentioned, the real estate pimps are banking on rents and prices going up. These things must go up. Why else would you own? We're looking at a chart from Urban Nation, and it's interesting. It wasn't until Q1 2017 that it became negative cash flow, because a lot of people think, oh, it's been negative cash flow in Toronto for years. Not really. It's only been about 4 or 5 years since we saw this massive shift where people were buying condos and being okay with a negative cash flow. But we've got all types of buyers in this market, a little bit for everybody, right? In fact, there's actually 3 types of buyers. We got the A, the B, and the C buyers. So you'd consider the real estate pumps would probably be farmer C. Anyways. Let's get into some hot topics. Moving on. There's your bit of your rental update, but please subscribe and like if you see rents rising as I do, and support the channel, guys. Leave me a comment, give me a little shout, a little hello if you're still with us today. So let's move on. Let's get into some big topics, starting with BNM Bloomberg. This could be an industry shifter. This is looking specifically at the US, but I think it's something we need to be paying attention to as real estate professionals up here north of the border. So we've got this management. I don't even know how to pronounce these guys' name. Cerberus Capital Management. There you go. And related entities bought more than 200 houses. Sounds small, right? But we're just getting started. In the first quarter through next generation home flippers called iBuyers. iBuyers, what? Here's what they are. iBuyers have sprung up in recent years, seeking to profit by streamlining the notorious complex process of selling a home. They use software to estimate values and make rapid offers to home buyers, or homeowners rather, who express interest in selling their properties. Technology making its way into the market. When an owner accepts the offer, the iBuyer makes light repairs and puts the home back on the market, seeking to profit by charging what they call a convenience fee. So what's happening here, these iBuyers, is they're selling it to whale buyers. Big buyers are moving in and picking these things up in droves, right? Which limits expenses, cuts out commissions to real estate agents. Screw the realtors. I love saying that because I am one, no? I think it's ironic. And lets the tech firms move homes quickly and benefit from economies of scale. We're selling massive homes. You can get rid of that property quick. Today, some big company will buy it. Who cares? Who cares? You're selling it. What do you care? If selling to an investor is easier for the seller, why ever sell on the open market again? Don't worry. You'll still be able to live there, buyers. You just need to pay rent. And this is the irony. This is what we're experiencing. These big tech firms, yeah, they're really helping the real estate market down in the US. I can't wait for Zillow to just make this big up splash here in Canada. It's going to be fantastic, right? And with tech firms moving into Canada, are we next? There's a question. John Pasals on Twitter has to say this. As I've been saying for a long time, Canada is a country of real estate investors. Investors are buying 20% of all homes in Canada and 23% in Toronto. What is a reasonable share of investors, he asks? I'm not aware of a specific number, but when buy-to-rent investors made up 15% of any mortgages in the UK back in 2015, the Bank of England warned it would, quote, it was a threat to the country's financial stability at 15%. The UK government 5 years ago did what John says he's been suggesting is needed in Canada, which I think is more and more likely. As I'm researching and investigating, the cries are getting louder. We'll talk about some of those cries happening right now. But policies that make real estate less desirable for domestic and foreign investors are the ones that are needed, he says. Prioritizing homes as a place to live in and not just another asset class for investors. Bun the investors. Bun you guys. Right? That's literally our entire fan base listening, guys. I'm on your team. I'm on your team. I'm on your team. But this is crazy. No? Yeah. And did you hear about their livestock? Oh, this is talking about the UK. Did you hear about the UK's livestock delivery service? Sorry, I've butchered the delivery. That was a joke. I purposely messed it up. I'm back good. blogto.com. Article called "House in Toronto with no bedrooms has just sold for more than $1 million." I think they listed for like $7.99 or $8.99. Well, there you go. Got no bedroom. That's the requirement. No, they don't even have a first bedroom. Is that the primary bedroom? Can't call it a master bedroom. Gotta get your terminology right these days. blogto.com. There's an article. This is very interesting if you're a Toronto resident. Maybe you're curious to know. Maybe you're really excited about all these Netflix specials of murders and murder mysteries. Well, why not turn your local neighborhood into a murder mystery by looking up this new thing that tracks crime in Toronto neighborhoods? Interesting. The new Tor Crime app, it's called, Tor Crime app, has been created for users to research major crimes in the city by neighborhood. Currently, we got assault, robbery, auto theft, breaking and entering, and theft over 5,000 as included in the application. Could be fun, right? Look up your specific address, and you find the stats on what crimes occurred within a short walk of that address. I mean, it's really bringing it to life for us, no? But the next hot topic I want to talk about is this debate, right? This debate between will cottages or downtown win 5 years from now? So I've kind of been known for thinking, you know what, I think cottages, if there's a bubble, it's in the cottage space. Well, I think some of these articles are maybe pointing to the potential of people coming back to the city, and definitely in the next 5 years, seeing an opportunity the closer you come back to the city. Well, I'm seeing, here's why I think this. Financialpost.com, there's an article called "Small Towns Join the Real Estate Big Leagues as Pandemic Turns Tables on Price Growth." What they talk about here is this concept that was found in the Journal of Urban Economics in 1996. It's kind of been this like legendary urban economist talking about kind of how the explanation of everything as it relates to how close you live to the downtown versus your prices. Here's what they say. An obvious explanation of why prices at the periphery have risen faster is that they are usually lower than the core, with room to grow and narrow the gap with the urban center. The further you go as far as commute time from the downtown, the lower the prices are, the bigger that kind of gap that takes place. And we've seen charts, probably you've seen charts, I know I have, of the city and how the further you go, there's a couple of anomalies. I think Oakville, Mississauga, there's a few anomalies, but generally speaking, Toronto follows the same principles. Housing prices at the urban periphery are expected to increase faster than those at the core when improved transport infrastructure happens, such as high-speed rail or new highways, lowers transportation costs for travel to and from the center. You speed up that time, it boosts the value. And so they conclude, this same article, they say, whereas home prices will not continue to appreciate at such high rates, the gains in house prices in small towns will likely outlast the pandemic. So two things are happening. The gains that you're experiencing out in the middle of the boonies, out in the middle of nowhere, they're going to last, they're going to survive. But don't expect it to continue to appreciate at such a high level. That's the lesson that comes out of that, all based on these kind of fundamentals that have existed since at least the mid-90s when the report was written. So what's happening here is people, because of the way prices are going, your ability to leave the city to get something more affordable is almost not even an option anymore. People are now turning to alternative investing, and we're seeing alternative investing on the rise. The Star.com had an article called "Crowdfunding Real Estate Growing, but Remember to Research Before Investing," according to experts. They're talking about in BC, Granville Island, there's a building, 45 apartments atop a Subway, restaurant, and a nail salon. So what's interesting about this project is it's being funded by more than 1,000 people. How does that happen? Well, it's through this company called Addy, a Vancouver-based company offering crowdfunding. Industry watchers predict more on their way as housing prices soar in Toronto and Vancouver. You can't afford to buy a house. You can't afford to buy a rental property. You still want to invest in real estate. Why would you not? So you're going to start to do it through crowdfunding. But they say prospective investors should do their research, even if it's a nominal amount. Even if you're putting $100, know where you're putting that money. The Ontario Securities Commission doesn't offer specific advice around these platforms, but said crowdfunding investment, quote, listen to this, maybe this is where we should head. They present heightened risks, including the potential to lose the entire amount invested, a lack of detail usually available in the prospectus, and possible restrictions on reselling. You could get stuck with the sour apple, sour lemon, whatever. I guess a lemon is reserved for cars, but whatever. You get my point. So I guess it leaves me asking the question. So are we just like what happened when you see the stress test when the stress test hit the mortgage industry, we saw a lot of people move to these kind of unregulated areas. Is that maybe what's taking place here? Are we turning to higher risk investing because we have no other choice? It also reminds me of retirees, right? Investing in bonds because it's more secure, but when you got no gains in the bond market relative to inflation, it forces you to invest in equities. It pushes Canadians to higher risk investments, which is no big deal until it's a big deal. No? You know what happens when you run out of manure on a farm? You have to make do. Which brings me to, I believe this is the last hot topic. We're getting into some fun stuff. CTV News had an article called New Stress Test May Moderate Housing, Push Buyers to Seek More Affordable Homes. BMO. They're the ones talking about that. But of course, we got the new mortgage stress test taking place on June 1st, very soon, city near you. They will set the qualifying rate. By the way, I'm noticing lenders already using these rates, but they're going to put it at 5.25 or whatever's greater between that and 2 percentage points above the contract rate. Also, we saw an announcement, according to Eric Hertzberg, but he's talking about on Thursday, Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland said that we're going to start to see this also involved in the insured mortgage segment. So both will end up having to hit this qualifier. But to kind of wrap this conversation up, I was chatting with a reporter from the Canadian Real Estate Wealth magazine, just kind of giving some of my thoughts. And it's really interesting to see all these changes, pushing buyers down, low rise to condo, to rentals, to then affordable housing. And this entire message, and you're probably hearing it scattered through the show today, but I believe it's so true. This message that there's nothing wrong with renting. It's just ongoing. There's nothing wrong with renting. That's fine. It's fine. It's just how it is. And it's almost because we have no better option. Instead of fixing the system, why don't we just it's a Band-Aid solution. We'll just push them to the next thing and we'll deal with it at that level. Well, if the goal is to keep people moving up to make low-end homes available, you want to move from a condo into a townhouse into a detached. That's the move, because as you move along, you create housing for the next generation. Well, beyond price itself, the stress test is maybe the biggest burden right now. That's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing the stress test becoming a tremendous burden. Unless you're renewing, it's very challenging for you now to move properties. Even though rates are as low as they are, the stress test makes it nearly impossible for you to do so. All right, let's get into our last topic here. What keeps pushing prices beyond affordability, beyond some of the things that we talked about today? The best way to protest is with a sign. With a sign you hold up over your head or your billboard or whatever. I mean, it's what the cows did when farmers made them social distance due to COVID, right? It's the sign they were holding. It was like, we just want to be heard. Well, guess who else wants to be heard? According to Toronto Stories, a fed-up Reddit group posts satire billboards mocking Canadian housing market. Located at Queen and Spadina, bright red billboard reads, quote, "Can't afford a home? Question mark. Have you tried finding richer parents?" That would be one way to do it. No. They also had another sign that read, "Homes aren't for you. They're for the rich. You can rent," right? Speaking to all of these issues. So this Reddit group, r/Canada Housing, has over 13,800 members who are, quote, mad as hell. Mad as hell, could be about home prices and, quote, fighting to fix this. So here's some of their ideas. Some of the ideas that, because their voices are getting louder, and obviously my voice is one of the ones contributing to these things, I see the writing is on the wall in some ways. But here's some of the ideas they have. Number one, doubling the minimum down payment on investment properties. So for those who aren't keeping track, you need to put 40% down on an investment property, ensuring all data on homes, sales, listings, and bids are free and public. We don't want to see the sale data. We want to see all the bids data. They also want to make the bidding process transparent. Could that happen? Maybe. They also want to increase capital gains for investors and speculators, right? We should be charging. It's funny. Imagine if all of these things happen all at one time, what that could do to our market. But these are ideas. If any of these things happen, how interesting this would play out in our market. The final one being introducing new taxes for vacancies on short-term rentals. But they're really making waves because listen to this. In terms of next moves, Canada Housing Crisis is about to launch a new site called speculationnation.ca, intended to reveal in no uncertain terms the harm that investors are having on the housing market. The soon-to-launch website will list thousands of flips, speculative buys, and investment properties. We're going to call you out, bro. These are the ways you're making all the money. How dare you, investors, screw with our market? Guys, investors are just playing by the rules. They're playing the cards that they're dealt. If you don't like the way they're playing, deal them a worse hand by increasing your down payment requirements. And that's why I think these things, I mean, it costs literally nothing for the federal government to point a finger at investors. It's the easiest target in the book, right? If you want to invest in rental properties, best do it now. That's my thinking, because you don't know what comes tomorrow. You don't really know. You don't even know. Okay. But then we also say there's this conversation of what's driving, which is kind of the topic here today. What's driving real estate prices in Toronto? MortgageBrokerNews.ca had three topics or three things they think is driving the market. Number one, taxes and development charges. Absolutely. Land transfer taxes and fees, with the Canadian Taxpayer Federation tagged among the most onerous consumer side burdens, representing an additional $54,000 to every detached sold in Toronto. Why not an extra half a $100,000? Half $100K, right? Some development charges in the GTA have increased by up to 878% since 2004, adding about 164 and change thousand to the cost of an average new build condo. And then you wonder why prices are going up for new builds. Quote, unlike many North American cities, Toronto cannot add a surtax on income or a sales tax on products like gas, or tax education or healthcare facilities yet. So they must rely on real estate. That's kind of the solution that I'm hearing here. Like what other choice do you leave? Not to mention all the spending, all the cuts, and all of the overspending or the challenges, the lack of collecting funds this year due to COVID. Real estate is really the only solution. I know it's crappy, but it's what any business would do. And ultimately the municipality is a zero net, whatever. It's what any crappy business would do. Any business would do in a crappy situation. The government is just a modern day entrepreneur. Reason number two they give for housing prices going through the roof. Foreign buyers, stupid, stinking foreign buyers. 2017 figures from the Census metropolitan area revealed that about $37.4 billion worth of properties in Toronto are owned by foreign buyers. Don't worry. Federal government's going to protect you. They're going to tax them. Only if it's vacant. But if it's vacant, we're going to tax them. We're going to make it harder on them. Just put a bloody tenant in there, no? I'll buy 10 more. I'll get more tenants. It's great. But then there's this other side. Foreign investors are scooping new condo supply in Toronto and Vancouver. Guess how many? Guess how many condos made after 2010 are owned by non-residents? Here's the number. 1 in 20. 1 in 20, about 5%. That's the numbers. So let's tax them. No? Let's target that group. Could 5% be messing with the entire industry? Who cares? Tax them anyways. Reason number three, low interest rates. Low interest rates, which comes with no explanation. But what I do want to talk about here is that the Bank of Canada is now, they're not just saying interest rates won't go up. They're not going to say interest rates we're going to prolong it. We're trying to stimulate the economy. It seems as though the tune is changing. It is changing to get more in line with the banks are saying, which they predict that we're going to see interest rates rising relatively soon. Well, it sounds that way because the Bank of Canada Governor Tiff McClem said recent gains in home prices aren't sustainable. And he warned, here's your warning, households against taking too much mortgage debt because interest rates will eventually rise. Now we're talking about recognizing, guys, rates will rise. We're going to try anyways. We're going to try. So maybe we should tell the feds too. I think they need to know, right? They keep making it rain and saying we must, quote, invest in the future, but save some spending for when we hit an actual drought season. No, it's a growing problem. You got to laugh about these things, man. It hurts your soul, but why not chuckle? TheGlobeandMail.com. There's an article called Want to Cool the Housing Market, Raise Property Taxes. Here's another idea. Two of the biggest economic problems caused by the pandemic could be addressed by increasing property taxes on your home. I think this is a fantastic. I know we're going a little bit overtime here, I think, on this podcast, but I think this is a great point. And I really hope you guys are sticking this out because I think this is important. Quote, if people are paying higher property taxes, they can't afford to pay as much for a mortgage and they won't buy as big a house. This is talking to Frank Clayton, who is a co-founder, senior researcher of Ryerson University Urban Research and Land Development. But here's what their thinking is. Higher property taxes would also help the finances of municipal governments. Two birds with one stone, which have faced rising costs of the pandemic and falling revenues from sources like transit and parking. Well, currently makes you wonder, what are they doing with property taxes? Because you'd think property taxes should be going up. You know, we got assessed values going up. Well, what happens is they reassess in a time like this and they end up bringing the rates down to kind of keep it in line with what they would have collected before. But Mr. Clayton, this dude is saying by his prescription for property taxes is this. This is a suggestion. Why not keep a level tax rate and apply it against assessed values as they rise over time or fall, right? If assessed values goes up, keep the rate the same. Quote, I've been arguing for years that the effective tax rate should stay the same, just like income tax and sales tax. If you're going to move that amount, what's the point? If we keep it, would that not make an amazing way to regulate housing prices from getting out of hand? John Pasala says in his Twitter post in responding to these thoughts, raising property taxes is not a short-term solution, but has longer-term impacts. Real estate is a long-term investment. I think we should maybe be focusing there as well. Number one, higher property taxes means people can take on less debt and spend less on housing. Number two, it makes investing in real estate far less attractive. And number three, it reduces inequality by increasing taxes on capital versus income. Interesting thoughts. I'm not sure why we moved the target every time, right? If we just kept the rate the same, the market, in my opinion, would self-regulate. But keep it simple. Keep it simple. Like a farmer. I read that 73% of apple farmers are illiterate. I think that's what that says. But it's okay, because they're still living fruitful lives. Please subscribe. Please hit that like button. Leave us a 5-star review if this show makes your life a little bit sweeter. And I'll see you guys next time. Take care and keep it real.